Hello, psychology class. I wanted to make another video for you to talk about the upper brain and the lower brain and the central nervous system. I'll begin with my tennis ball. I'm using it to represent the brain. And you are all familiar with the tennis ball. The outer covering, this fuzzy part, that could represent the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is the outer covering of your brain. When you see a picture of a brain, you see that wrinkly gray matter on the outside, and that is actually a brain organ in and of itself. You could take a human brain and peel that outer layer off. And that structure, if you were able to shake it out completely, it would be the size of a bath towel, which I think is just amazing. A very, very thin bath towel. That wrinkly look to the cerebral cortex is because that very thin tissue is overlayered and overlayered and overlayered. And the cerebral cortex is where we have higher order thought. It covers those four lobes of the brain. The word cortex actually means bark, like bark of a tree. So it's the outer covering. Then we have already talked about how the upper brain is organized into the four lobes: the frontal, the parietal, the temporal, and the occipital. When I said upper, you might be thinking up like high and lower brain, nose down kind of thing. No. In brain organization, the upper part of the brain is what is close to the surface, and the lower brain is the center of the brain. Let's start with the lower brain. The lower brain structures are for survival. They keep us alive. Smack in the middle of your brain is a structure called the thalamus. So here's the brain, and now we have a chopstick. But I want you to imagine that the brain and the chopstick actually represent the central nervous system. So you've got the brain and the spinal cord. I usually think of a lollipop. That's my little go-to for central nervous system, but I don't have a lollipop. I have a chopstick. I have a tennis ball, and it works. The central nervous system, very simple. It's just the brain and the spinal column. Now, think about how your spinal column enters into your brain. And as it enters into your brain, the top of your spinal column is the thalamus. And the thalamus is an egg-shaped structure right in the middle of your brain. It sends all the information to the place it needs to go. Remember, lower brain structures are for survival, and we need to get those messages to the right place in the brain so that you know to move your foot out of the fire or do whatever it is you need to do to survive. Another very important lower brain structure would be the hypothalamus. The word hypo means underneath, and the hypothalamus is small but mighty. It regulates us. There are 5 ways that the hypothalamus regulates us. Temperature. If you were to get terribly cold, if you were to have no heat whatsoever, hypothermia, you might last 3 hours, maybe. It will kill you if your body temperature is not regulated. Very important. The hypothalamus also lets us know when we're hungry. It lets us know when we are thirsty. And it also has a role in regulating sexuality to perpetuate the species. So you can see how all of these functions are super important just to keep us alive, to keep the human race alive. Another function of the hypothalamus would be anger and managing anger, regulating anger. You might remember that there's another brain structure called the amygdala, which is also very much involved in anger and regulating strong emotions, fear and anger. So we had the hypothalamus with its 5 functions. Now we go to the amygdala, and the amygdala is a very small structure. If you were to look into your brain, in the left hemisphere and in the right hemisphere, you would see the amygdala. And the amygdala is about the size of an almond, and we've got one on each side of our brain, helping us to process fear and anger. In addition, in the lower brain, we have the hippocampus, and the hippocampus helps us to lay down memory tracks. If there were damage to the hippocampus, we would have amnesia or problems learning new information. It just would not stick. So that is obviously very important for survival. We need that hippocampus. And then I haven't really talked yet about the cerebellum. The cerebellum is underneath the occipital lobe, and it keeps us balanced. It keeps us upright. You think about our everyday activities, whether it is a matter of lifting a cup to your mouth to drink, or playing the piano, or pressing the brake on your car. The cerebellum keeps us oriented, keeps us balanced, and makes us able to do the things that we need to do. It's also for orientation. So think about those times when you've been on autopilot and you just walked somewhere and you got there and you don't even remember walking there. That's because your cerebellum held that orientation and that memory. Most of you have a set of stairs that you travel up and down on a regular basis. The cerebellum just lets you go up and down. You don't have to count the steps. You already know without looking at your feet how far you need to go. And this is just the surface. It's fantastic. All of the functions that are enabled by the various structures of the brain. So we've talked quite a bit now about lower brain structures, and I do want to come back to the nervous system for just a moment. Central nervous system, you will need to know this for the exam, of course. You should know that it's just the brain and the spinal cord. So brain, spinal cord, everything outside of your central nervous system is peripheral, traveling down your arms, those nerves, to your legs, to your toes. And we will talk about the peripheral nervous system next time, since it is a little complicated, and I'm going to break it down for you. Please get in touch with me if you have questions, and I hope you are reviewing for your test, which will happen at the end of the week. All right. Bye-bye.